Marlene was 57 years old when a bank employee turned his computer screen away from her so she could not see the numbers on it. He did not do it rudely. That was the part that stayed with her longest. He did it professionally. The way you draw a curtain, the way you close a door with care so it doesn't make a sound. He smiled when he did it. He said the product he was describing might not be the right fit at this particular time. He said there were other options they could explore. He said the words with the practiced warmth of someone who delivers this kind of news several times a day and has learned to make it feel almost like kindness. Marlene sat across from him in the chair on the other side of the desk, and she nodded and she said she understood. She folded her hands in her lap. She was wearing her good blazer, the navy one she kept for appointments and parent-teacher conferences and anything that required her to be taken seriously. She had ironed it the night before. She had arrived 8 minutes early. She had brought a folder with her documents organized in the order she had been told to bring them. None of it had mattered. She drove home from that appointment, and she sat in her parked car in front of her building for a while, engine off, hands in her lap. And she said something to herself, out loud, in the quiet of her car, that she had never said before. She said it softly and without drama. But something in those words, spoken in that particular moment of exhaustion and clarity, became the pivot point of the next 2 years of her life. By the end of this story, you will know exactly what she said. And I believe, if you have ever sat in a chair like that one, across from a desk like that one, in a blazer you ironed the night before, you will understand why those words changed everything. Marlene Cooper had worked as a receptionist at a dental office for 21 years. She was the first voice every patient heard when they called, and the first face they saw when they came through the door. And she had learned very early that both of those things mattered more than people thought. She answered the phone on the first ring. She remembered the names of children who had grown from baby teeth to permanent ones over the years of coming in twice a year and were now bringing their own children. She remembered who had anxiety and needed a few extra minutes before being called back. She kept a small dish of wrapped peppermints on the counter because she had noticed, years ago, that people's shoulders dropped slightly when they took one, and shoulders dropping was always a good sign in a dental waiting room. She was 57, medium height, with reading glasses she wore on a chain around her neck and pushed up onto her forehead when she didn't need them, which gave her a slightly professorial look that the dentist she worked for had once told her inspired confidence in the patients. She had taken that as the compliment it was meant to be and filed it away without making a production of it. That was Marlene's way with most things. Receive it quietly, use it practically, move on. The one sensory truth of Marlene's working life that she herself could not perceive was the spearmint. She had chewed spearmint gum for 21 years at that front desk, a habit born from wanting clean breath for phone calls and face-to-face greetings, and it had become so automatic that she often did not realize she was chewing. Her daughter teased her about it. Her sister had pointed it out twice. But Marlene never noticed it happening. It had simply become part of who she was at work, and who she was at work had, over 21 years, become most of who she was anywhere. She lived alone in a 2-bedroom apartment she had kept after her daughters left, because the neighborhood was familiar and the landlord was decent, and starting over somewhere new had begun to feel like a project she did not have the energy for. She kept the apartment orderly. She cooked most nights, real meals, the kind that produce dishes and require time, because cooking was one of the few hours of the day that belonged entirely to her. She ate at the kitchen table with a book propped against the salt shaker, and she considered this, without calling it anything, one of the small dignities of a life lived mostly in service of other people's comfort. What Marlene kept in the drawer of her bedside table, beneath a phone charger and 2 pens and a folded receipt she could not remember the purpose of, was a small blue envelope. The envelope was sealed. It had been sealed for 20 years. On the front, in her own handwriting from a time when she wrote with more confidence in the loops of her letters, were the words, "Open when you are ready." She had written it to herself at 37, in the aftermath of her divorce, in the strange clarity that sometimes comes right after the worst of something has passed. She had written herself a letter about what she wanted her life to look like when she was 57. She had sealed it. She had kept it. And she had never opened it, because for 20 years there had always been a reason why now was not the right time, why she was not ready yet, why the opening of it might show her a distance between the woman she had imagined and the woman she had become that she was not prepared to measure. If you are watching this and something in Marlene's drawer feels familiar to you, something you have kept sealed because opening it required a courage you were saving for later, then this channel was built for this moment. Stay. The appointment at the bank had not been Marlene's idea of a good Thursday, but she had made it and prepared for it, and gone, because she had decided, quietly and privately, that it was time to do something real about the situation she had been managing for years and calling under control, when it was not quite that. The situation was this: she was 57, she had no pension, she had a retirement account with $11,200 in it that she had not contributed to in 4 years, because there was always something else the money needed to do. She had a credit card balance that had not moved meaningfully in 2 years, because the minimums were all she could manage, and she had begun to have the specific Sunday night feeling of a woman who can see the edge of something but cannot yet see what is on the other side of it. She had heard that homeowners could sometimes use the equity in their property to consolidate debt at a lower interest rate. She was not a homeowner, she rented. But she had thought, perhaps she could speak to someone at the bank about the credit card balance, about options she might not know existed, about what someone in her situation could do to move the needle before 57 became 60, and then 65 and the needle was still not moving. She arrived at the bank in her navy blazer with her folder of documents. She was seen by a man in his early 30s who was professionally pleasant and who made her feel, within approximately 8 minutes, that she was in the wrong room. He asked about assets. She listed what she had. He asked about property. She did not have property. He asked about investment accounts. She had the $11,200. He looked at the screen. He turned it slightly, the way she would later find herself describing it to her sister, the way you move something you want to keep private. He said the options available to her at this particular time were somewhat limited. He said it in the same tone of voice someone uses to tell you that the dish you ordered is unfortunately unavailable today. He offered her a pamphlet about secured credit cards. She took the pamphlet. She thanked him. She stood up. She shook his hand. She walked through the glass doors and into the parking lot in the November cold with the pamphlet in her folder and the folder under her arm and her good blazer holding her upright the way good blazers do. She sat in her car. On her desk at the dental office, she kept a small framed photograph from a company picnic she had attended years ago, early in her time there. In the photograph, she was laughing, really laughing, the kind of laugh that gets into the eyes and the shoulders and makes the whole face unguarded. She kept the photo because it was one of the few images of herself she genuinely liked. But she kept it turned slightly away from the patients, angled toward the wall, because she no longer looked like that, and she was not sure what it meant that she no longer did. She thought about that photograph in the car. She thought about the woman in it. And then, in the quiet, she said something out loud to herself. She said it the way you say things when you have stopped performing okayness even for yourself. She said, "I deserve to understand my own money." That was all. 6 words. In the cold of her parked car, with a bank pamphlet about secured credit cards in a folder on the seat beside her. She did not know yet that those 6 words were the beginning of something. Marlene had not planned to be at the DMV on a Wednesday afternoon. She had planned to be at her desk answering phones, but the office had a half day for a staff training, and she needed to renew her license, and the DMV was nearby, and there is no good time to go to the DMV, and so she went. She took a number. She found a seat in the long plastic row of chairs, and she settled in for what she understood would be an indeterminate wait, and she took out her phone and then, because she had left the house in a hurry, found that it had only 11% battery remaining, and she put it away and looked at the wall. The woman next to her said, "After a moment, saves you the scroll, at least." Marlene looked at her. She was older, perhaps 72 or 73, with white hair in a short braid down the back of her neck, and a posture so upright it was almost architectural. She was knitting something rust-colored from a ball of yarn. she had produced from her bag with the efficiency of someone who had long ago decided to be prepared for waiting. Marlene said yes, she supposed it did. The woman's name was Vera. She had been a postal carrier for 34 years, walking routes in heat and cold and the particular indignity of rain that comes in sideways, and she had the calves to prove it and was not shy about saying so. She had retired 5 years ago and now spent, she said, a significant portion of her time doing exactly what she wanted, which turned out to be not very different from what she had always done, except that nobody gave her a schedule. They talked the way you talk when you are in a waiting room with no phone battery and time to spend. Marlene did not plan to mention the bank. It came out somewhere in the middle of an unrelated conversation, the way things come out when you have not said them to anyone and they have been sitting in you looking for a door. She described the appointment, the screen being turned, the pamphlet. Vera listened. She did not interrupt. She did not make a face of sympathy or outrage. She listened the way someone listens when they are hearing a story they recognize. Then she was quiet for a moment. The number called overhead was not theirs. The rust yarn moved through her fingers. She said, without looking up, "They treat you according to what they think you know about yourself." Marlene waited. Vera said, "The bank doesn't decide your worth. Only you can let it." She said it without weight or ceremony, the way you state a thing that has been true for a long time. She pulled a new loop through, smooth and even. Marlene sat with those words. She turned them over in her mind. She thought about the chair across the desk. She thought about folding her hands in her lap. She thought about how she had arrived prepared and professional and had still walked out feeling like she had been assessed and found to be a certain kind of customer, a certain kind of woman, and fefdom to be redirected toward a pamphlet. She thought about how she had let the screen turn without saying a word. Their numbers were called almost simultaneously. They gathered their things. At the counter, side by side, they did what they had come to do. Vera put her yarn away with the same unhurried movements she did everything with. At the door, she turned to Marlene and said simply, "Go back, but go back knowing what you know." Marlene watched her walk out into the afternoon. Then she walked to her car and sat for a moment before starting the engine. The bank doesn't decide your worth. Only you can let it. She drove home, and she did not touch the blue envelope in the bedside drawer. But she thought about it all evening. She thought about the woman who had written it, and the woman who had been afraid to open it, and whether those two women were as far apart as she had been telling herself. Marlene went back to the bank. Not to that branch, not to that man. She went to a different branch on a different day, and she asked to speak to a financial counselor. And when she sat down, she was not wearing the navy blazer. She was wearing her regular clothes, and she had her folder, but she had also brought something else. A list of questions she had written at her kitchen table over the course of a week, slowly and specifically, and she intended to ask all of them. The first thing she understood, sitting in that second meeting, was that the problem at the first appointment had not been her financial situation. Her financial situation was what it was, genuinely limited in some ways, but not without possibility. The problem had been that she had walked in without a language, without the specific vocabulary that makes people in financial institutions take you seriously, and not having the vocabulary had allowed someone else to define the terms of the conversation. She had let the screen turn. She had taken the pamphlet. She had said thank you and walked out. She had handed over the power of the room by being unprepared to hold it. And here is where the loop from the very first night closes. Because what Marlene said in her car in the parking lot, those 6 words, "I deserve to understand my own money," was not just a feeling. It was a decision. And the decision was this: she was going to learn the language. Not to impress anyone. Not to become someone she was not. But because you cannot advocate for yourself in a room when you do not know what the room is saying. She started learning, not in a dramatic way, not an overnight transformation. She found a 1-hour session through the public library, a financial literacy workshop for adults, free of charge, held on a Tuesday evening in a room that smelled like old carpet and industrial cleaner. She was the oldest person there by about 15 years. She sat in the front row, and she took notes on a yellow legal pad, and she asked 3 questions, and she left knowing 4 things she had not known when she arrived. The second thing she understood in the weeks that followed was that her credit score was both worse than she had assumed and more fixable than she had been told. She pulled her full credit report, the real one, and she read it line by line, slowly, with her reading glasses on. She found 2 errors. Actual errors, accounts that had been reported incorrectly, old debts that showed unresolved status when they had been paid. She filed disputes. It took time and follow-up and 2 phone calls she did not want to make. Both errors were corrected. Her score moved by 31 points. 31 points is not everything. 31 points is not everything. The third thing was about the retirement account. $11,200 sitting still, not being contributed to, not being positioned to grow in any particular direction. She had not touched it because she did not understand it, and not understanding it had become a reason not to engage with it, which had become years. She called the account provider. She asked to speak with someone who could explain what she had, what it was doing, and what the actual options were. The person she spoke to was patient and did not make her feel that her questions were small. She learned that her account was sitting in the default allocation she had chosen when she was 34 and had never changed. She was 57. The allocation appropriate for 34 was not appropriate for 57. She changed it. It took 20 minutes. The fourth thing she learned was harder, because it was about a choice she had been avoiding. She had been at the same dental office for 21 years. She was good at her job. The job paid her a salary that had been adjusted modestly over the years, but that had never, in 21 years, reflected what 21 years of institutional knowledge and patient loyalty and showing up on the first ring actually costs to replace. She had not asked for a raise in 7 years. She had told herself it was not the right time, that the practice was going through changes, that she didn't want to rock anything. She asked for the raise. She researched what a dental receptionist with her experience earned in her city. She wrote down the number. She walked into the dentist's office on a Tuesday morning, and she said the words without apology and without excessive explanation. She said she had been there 21 years, and she was asking for a $12 increase per hour to bring her rate in line with the market for her experience level. He said he needed a few days to look at the numbers. 4 days later, he said yes to $8. She said she appreciated it, and she would be back in 6 months to discuss the rest. He looked slightly surprised. She returned to her desk and answered the phone on the first ring, the same as always. The fifth thing, the one that arrived last and went deepest, she opened the envelope. It was a Sunday night in February, 10 months after the bank appointment, and she had made herself dinner and cleaned the kitchen, and there was nothing left to do and nowhere left to hide. She went to the bedside drawer. She took out the small blue envelope. She held it in both hands the way you hold something you have carried a long time. She turned it over. She ran her thumb across her own handwriting, open when you are ready. She thought about how many times she had decided she was not ready. She thought about Vera at the DMV with her rust yarn and her 34 years of walking. She thought about what it means to let someone else decide your worth, to turn the screen away from yourself, to take the pamphlet and say thank you and walk out without asking a single question. She opened the envelope. She read what 37-year-old Marlene had written to 57-year-old Marlene in the quiet clarity after the worst thing had passed. She read it slowly, sitting on the edge of her bed in the lamplight. She read it twice, and she cried, not because the woman she had become was less than the woman she had imagined. She cried because she was so much more specific, more particular, more worn in the right places and stronger in ways that 37 could not have named. The letter was beautiful, and it was wrong in its details, and it was right in its direction. She had been going the right direction the whole time. She had just been afraid to look. 11 months. That was the span of time between the bank parking lot and the morning Marlene sat across from a different banker in a different branch and had a completely different conversation. She had paid down her credit card balance by nearly $4,000. She had done this by applying the raise, the corrected credit report, the retirement adjustment, and the $114 a month she had found by actually looking at her fixed expenses and canceling 3 things she had not used in over a year, not dramatic amounts on their own. Together, pointed in one direction, enough. She had opened a high-yield savings account, a term she now knew the meaning of and could use correctly in a sentence. She had put $200 into it the first month and had not touched it. The second month the same. By the 11th month, there was $2,340 in it that had never existed in her financial life before. There was a month in the middle, the sixth one, that nearly broke the plan. Her car needed a repair that she had not budgeted for, $960. She sat at the kitchen table with the estimate in her hand, and she felt the old familiar pull toward the credit card. She did not use the credit card. She called 2 other mechanics. The second estimate was $680. She chose the second mechanic. She paid in cash from the savings account, and she felt the loss of it genuinely and fully for about 48 hours, and then she added the next month's deposit, and the account went back in the right direction, and she understood that this was what the account was for, and that using it correctly was not a failure. She went back to the bank in October. The branch was not the same branch. The appointment was not for a product she could not qualify for. She went in to ask about the possibilities available to her now, specifically and by name, with her credit score and her savings balance and her list of questions and the language she had spent 11 months learning. She sat in the chair. The screen was not turned. After the appointment, she walked to her car. She sat in the driver's seat. She thought about the last time she had sat in a car in a bank parking lot. She thought about what she had said to herself then, 6 words, in the quiet of her own company. She had said she deserved to understand her own money, and she had gone and understood it. Not all of it. Enough of it to be in a different conversation. Enough of it to be a different customer in a different chair, having a different year. She started the engine, and she drove home in the October afternoon. And she felt something that she could not find a precise word for, something between satisfaction and readiness, the feeling of a woman who has figured out where she is and is beginning, clearly, to see where she is going. It was a Thursday in spring when Marlene saw her in the waiting area of the bank. Marlene had come in to handle something simple, a signature, 5 minutes. She was sitting in one of the chairs by the door, while the teller made a copy of something, and across the waiting area, on one of the upholstered benches near the window, there was a woman who appeared to be in her early 40s, well put together, with a folder in her lap, and the particular stillness of someone who has been waiting longer than they expected and has begun to suspect that the wait means something about the outcome. The woman looked at her folder. She opened it and closed it. She looked at the door to the offices. She looked at her hands. Marlene recognized every single part of that. The teller returned. Marlene signed what needed to be signed. On her way to the door, she paused near the woman on the bench. She said gently, "First time?" The woman looked up. She had the careful expression of someone who had been practicing looking composed and was not quite there yet. She said, "Is it that obvious?" Marlene sat down in the chair beside her. She had 5 minutes before she needed to be back at the office. She decided the office could have 4 of them. She said, "They may turn the screen away from you in there, or they may find a very polished way of telling you that what you came for is not available at this particular time. If that happens, I want you to hear something before you walk out." The woman looked at her, fully attentive now. Marlene said, "The bank doesn't decide your worth, only you can let it." She said it the way Vera had said it, not as a pep talk, not as a motivational moment, just as the next true thing. The woman was quiet. She turned that over. Then she said, carefully, "But what do I actually do?" Marlene nodded. She understood the question. The feeling is not enough. The feeling needs a next step. She reached into her bag. She took out the small blue envelope. It was no longer sealed. The flap was loose now, opened and refolded, and the paper inside had been read and reread, and was soft at the creases the way important things get soft over time. She did not give the woman the letter inside. That was hers. But she held the envelope for a moment, and she thought about the woman who had written it at 37, and the woman who had finally opened it at 57, and the 20 years between them that had not been wasted, only slow. She said, "You make a list of questions, real ones, specific ones. You learn what they're saying so they can't say it past you. You go back, but you go back knowing what you know." She stood up. She smiled at the woman. The woman's name was called from the office doorway at that moment, and she stood too, and she straightened her jacket, and something in her posture had changed by just a degree, just enough. Marlene walked toward the door. On the way, she passed the window that faced the street, and the sun was coming through at the particular spring angle that makes everything look like it has been slightly improved. She thought about the photograph on her desk at the office, the one she kept turned slightly away, the woman laughing in it with her whole body. That morning, for the first time in a long time, she had turned it to face forward, toward whoever came through the door. Let them see it. Let them wonder what was funny. She walked out into the spring morning and she thought, that is what Vera's sentence sounds like when it finally comes out of your own mouth. The bank doesn't decide your worth. Only you can let it. You say it to yourself for months in parking lots and bedside tables and Tuesday evenings in public library classrooms, and then one day you say it to someone else and the circle is complete and you are, without having planned for it, exactly where the woman in the envelope was trying to get you to go. If Marlene's story landed somewhere true inside you today, if you have ever sat in a chair across from a desk and folded your hands in your lap and accepted a pamphlet when you deserved a real conversation, then I am asking you to do one thing before you close this video. Come down to the comments and write, Day 1, and tell me one question you have been afraid to ask. About your account, your retirement, your credit, your raise, your worth in any financial room you have been avoiding. Write it here. Say it where someone can see it. You do not have to have the answer yet. You just have to say the question out loud. I read every comment that comes in, and I will read yours. And if there is a woman in your life, a friend, a sister, a colleague, someone who has been sitting in that chair longer than she should have, please send her this video today. Not tomorrow. Today. She needs to hear Marlene's story. If this is your first time in this space, welcome. This channel was built for exactly this conversation, the one we do not always get to have, the one that is honest and direct and treats you like the intelligent, capable woman that you are. Subscribe, turn the bell on, and come back. There is more here waiting for you. More stories, more women who found their way through, more proof that the only screen that matters is the one you choose to look at directly. Thank you for being here. Take good care of yourself this week. Learn one new thing. Ask one question you have been holding. And remember, nobody else gets to turn that screen away. Not if you decide they don't.